Hi, this is Inform TV 100. Happy Black History Month. And today we're going to do a reading. We're going to read some more from the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself. It's a very small book of about 127 pages, very, very easy. So throughout Black History Month, we are going to do readings from this book. I'm gonna read the book. But before I get started, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button if you have not already done so. You won't regret it. And please hit the notification bell so you can get notified of all the videos. So I'm going to get started with a quote from Denzel Washington. This is one of my favorite Denzel Washington quotes. Denzel Washington's quote is, "Keep working, keep striving, never give up. If you fall down 7 times, get up on the 8th time. Without commitment, you will never start. Without consistency, you will never finish. Ease is a greater threat than hardship." Denzel Washington, never give up and never underestimate yourself of that you can't do something. You try to do the things that's in your heart to do. So I'm going to get into the book of the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself. So the last reading that we did, he described being a child, being a slave, how they take the children from their mothers at a very early age so they don't bond with the kids, with their offsprings. He talked about him not knowing his age, that the slave children were treated as chattel, and no slave child really knew their age, and he resented that because the white children all knew how old they were. But he gave an estimate of, in 1835, he believed he was about 27 years old. So I'm gonna he get into it. This is page 5. He said, "I have had 2 masters. My first master was called Captain Anthony, a title that he gained by sailing a boat on the Chesapeake Bay. He was not considered a rich slaveholder. He owned 2 or 3 farms and about 30 slaves. His property was under the care of an overseer named Plummer, a foul-mouthed and savage drunkard. Plummer always was armed with a whip and heavy club. I have known him to cut slave women's heads so horribly that Captain Anthony, who was affected by only extreme cruelty, would be enraged and threaten to whip Plummer. Hardened by a long life of slave holding, Captain Anthony, too, was cruel. Sometimes he took great pleasure in whipping a slave. The shrieks of my Aunt Hester often woke me at dawn. Captain Anthony would tie her up and whip her naked back until she was covered with blood. No words, no tears, no prayer from his victim softened his iron heart. The louder she screamed, the harder he whipped. Where the blood ran fastest, he whipped longest. He would whip her to make her scream and whip her to silence her. He wouldn't stop swinging the blood clotted whip until he was exhausted. I remember the first time I ever saw this horrible sight. I was only a small child, but I remember it well. It was the first of a long series of horrible scenes which I was forced to witness. It was my entrance to the hell of slavery, and I wish I could describe what I felt when I saw it. This first time occurred very soon after I went to live with Captain Anthony. Aunt Hester had gone out one night and happened to be absent when my master wanted to see her. He had ordered her not to go out in the evening and especially warned that she must never spend time with a certain man. This young man's name was Ned Roberts, and he belonged to Colonel Edward Lloyd. You may easily guess why Captain Anthony concerned himself with my aunt. She was a pretty woman of graceful figure in appearance. She had very few equals among the women, colored or white, in our neighborhood. Aunt Hester had not only disobeyed his orders in going out, but had been found with Ned. This infuriated Captain Anthony, who was himself no man of pure morals. Before he began whipping Aunt Hester, he took her into the kitchen and stripped her to the waist. He tied her hands with a strong rope and led her to a stool under a large hook in the ceiling. He made her stand on the stool and tied her hands to the hook. Her arms were now stretched to their full length, so that she stood on her tiptoes. He then said to her, "Now, you damn bitch, I'll learn you to disobey my orders." After rolling up his sleeve, he began to beat her with a heavy whip, and soon the warm red blood, amid heart-rending shrieks from her and the horror swearing from him, came dripping on the floor. I was so terrified and horror-stricken at the sight that I hid in a closet and did not dare come out until long after the whipping was over. I expected it to be my turn next. This was all new to me. I had always lived with my grandmother on the outskirts of the plantation, where she was placed to raise the children of the younger women. I had until now been away from the bloody scenes that often occurred on the plantations. uh, Chapter 2. Captain Anthony's family included two sons, Andrew and Richard, one daughter, Lucretia, and Lucretia's husband, Captain Thomas Oy. They all lived in one house on Colonel Lloyd's plantation. Captain Anthony was Colonel Lloyd's superintendent, what might be called the overseer of the overseers. I spent 2 years of childhood on Colonel Lloyd's plantation, about 12 miles north of Easton, Maryland, in Talbot County. Tobacco, corn, and wheat were the plantation's principal products. They were raised in great abundance on each of Colonel Lloyd's farms. Colonel Lloyd was able to keep a ship almost constantly busy carrying them to market in Baltimore. Captain Anthony's son in law, Thomas Odd, was the ship's captain. The ship was otherwise manned by four slaves, whom the other slave considered very important and very privileged, because it was a great thing to be allowed to travel to Baltimore. This is M4 TV 100. Happy Black History Month. We're reading Frederick Douglass. Please hit the like button. Colonel Lloyd kept between 300 and 400 slaves on his home plantation, and many more on his other farms, which numbered more than 20. The overseers of all 20 plus farms received instructions and advice from the managers of the home plantations, which was the great place of business and seat of government of all the farms. All disputes were settled there. Any slave who became unmanageable or showed a desire to run away was brought